Alrighty, hey guys. In this video I'm going to be animating an entire reload, basically unedited, so you can see the entire process and every decision that I make, as well as every mistake that I make. So let's see, in the scene here I've just got my arm rig and my gun rig. I've already got the base pose, everything's keyed on frame 0. I'm going to be animating at 30 FPS, and I think everything is good to go. For the setup I have the hands constrained to the gun. The right wrist is constrained to the gun master control, so it's following this control, and we're not going to be touching that really. The left wrist is following the mag though. I'm just going to do a basic single mag reload, grab it, drop it off screen, and then bring the same mag back up. And so you see if I move this mag, the hand follows. That's a pretty typical approach that a lot of people like to do, as it's quite reliable and straightforward to animate. But if you want, you could always constrain the mag to the hand if you want to do it that way. But for this case, I'm going to be using the mag driving the hand. So we don't need to have it connected to the gun at all because the mag is already going to be following the gun. Alright, so I think what I want to do is figure out my mag out pose to begin with. So everything's keyed on frame 0. I might go to something like frame 10 and figure out a nice mag out pose. Maybe we'll raise it up forwards a little bit. Let's see here. Something like this maybe. And we will grab the hand and reposition that. Now this idle pose is already, kind of close to what a mag out pose would be for the fingers, so that's pretty good. But obviously we're going to want to refine it. Yeah, we'll just have to rework the thumb, but that's not bad. Might rotate it forwards a little bit. We'll just got to make sure that we have enough clearance for the thumb to be touching this mag release. Yeah, maybe I'll bring it a little further down. Okay, not bad. Okay, I'm just gonna grab this elbow. Actually, this elbow is not keyed, so let's go back to frame 0, key it. This one? Okay, that's fine. I think I want the elbow to be a little further out there, so that this, you don't want this wrist angle being like inwards, you want it to be feeling kind of like an outwards wrist angle. That. Okay. Let's get the fingers. So this index is pretty good. I like the kind of angle that we've got going on here. Let's just kind of curl that around. And okay. Gonna have a little bit of clipping, but that's fine. Not sure if I'm gonna be liking that pose, but we'll see. Maybe I'll rotate everything out a little bit. Yeah. And metacarpal, maybe I'll bring this metacarpal out. It isn't touching the mag though, so I'm not entirely sure if that's needed. Okay, yeah, we should be pretty good. Maybe just a little bit. Like so. Metacarpals are always good for getting that extra little bit of pose that you need. Okay, something like that for the fingers. Yeah, it's a bit chunky, but it'll do, especially it's not really going to be that visible. Still, you want to have it looking pretty good. Okay, thumb is not bad. It does kind of feel a little lumpy though. What I might want to do is rotate this way and then back this way a little bit. But it is still on the lumpy side. Try going in a little bit. Take a look. Yeah, I think that'll work pretty well. One thing that you might want to do is selection sets. I like using the animate ones. I don't have any set up right now, but what I could do is say, grab the thumb, add a select set, call it left thumb, I'll make it blue, and then I'll do the same for the fingers. Where's my, there it is. Drag that up here. Our fingers. And then I could also do one for metacarpals and any like extra little controls like this this little piece here if I wanted to. I'll meta, and then I'll just add the rest. It's always good having select sets because it can make things a little bit faster when you're wanting to key everything. I could even select all of these and do L all. Now I can just do that key and I should be good to go. Okay, that's the mag out pose. Let's take the finger out of the trigger. I was thinking of the word for the trigger guard. That's a bit too upright. Maybe open that up a little bit so it's kind of floating. Yeah. Okay. Not bad, not bad. Alright. That's going to be our mag out pose. That's keyed. Key the mag, I think. And I guess the in-between spline is like usable, but I also like using stepped preview. So it doesn't do anything in between. So then I can do my own in-between pose when I'm working on the blockout. And that's just nice and helpful for making sure that I have full ownership over the posing that I'm doing and the timing and things, instead of being informed by what this is doing, as much as it might seem like it's, you know, free animation. Okay, so that's going to be that. I think I want to do a little bit of a dip of anticipation before going into that pose. So I'm going to dip down and I'm trying to keep the stock kind of fairly stable in screen space. And then I'm going to have it raise up here, I would say. Go forwards a little bit. And the stock is moving a little bit too much between these two. It's kind of getting too far away. So what I want to do is maybe have the tip of the gun moving a little bit more. And yeah, that's just kind of moving it in depth mostly. So I'll bring it a little closer to what that pose is. Maybe a little bit left. And what I'm also looking out for is the arc, or the path that the tip of the gun is taking. Okay, that's a bit flat there, but if we track the tip, see it's going down and also slightly to the left. So it's scooping, and then it's going to come up and around, and then down. Maybe I don't want to go up too much. Maybe I'll kind of ease into it from a lower point. Yeah, okay, so it's a little bit softer, not too extreme. The finger we could probably take out earlier. So I'll just move that to frame 6. Cool. Left wrist is fine there, and then on frame 6 we want it to start reaching. I am going to use a slider for this. I quite like Animbot's sliders for going between, you know, the left or the right keys. If you look at it in the graph editor, like if I scale to the right, it'll get closer to that mag out pose, and then I can go the opposite, overshoot, or go to the left, or whatnot. I find it quite handy. But obviously there's other tools that have sliders as well. Something like that. Maybe drop it a little lower because we need clearance for the thumb to reach. Maybe I'll zero out. Oh, that is crazy zeroed out. And here's where I can just grab all the fingers and then I can rotate them all out. That's going to be pretty intense because we typically wouldn't want to touch the fingertips as much as the others. Yeah. So let me just grab these ones. First joint. And then the second joint. Ignore this index because it's much more extended. I'll bring these out more. I'm thinking I might group the middle finger and the ring finger together just a little bit. You can see it's creating a little bit of texture in the pose. You've got the index by itself, and then these two fingers kind of close together, and then the pinky by itself. It's an easy way of creating some extra appeal in your posing. Something like that. Okay, that is not too bad. We'll see how it looks in motion. Select all the fingers and key them. It is feeling a little grabby. So we might want to do something like this, make it a little lower. Make sure it's not clipping or anything. Make sure it's not, maybe not too low. And the rest is staying in screen space for the most part between these two frames. I wonder if we want that or if we want it to feel like it is moving. Yeah, that's still quite grabby. Oh, it could be good. We'll try a bit lower. That's also not bad. It's kind of a more open reach there, and then tightening in. For this, I might do something like this for the index, for the tip of the index, to open it up a little bit more. Double click on the timeline. Okay, maybe that's too open. Okay. And then if we want, we can just do a little bit of detail in the thumb starting to open up here, possibly. Yeah. Not bad. You could even just have the wrist moving ever so slightly. Like that. Yep. And so the trajectory of the wrist is pretty direct. It's just moving downwards here in screen space. So it's tactical. Okay. Now that's not bad. I am going to add a little bit of a settle or a reaction here, getting into the mag out pose. So say this is roughly where we want it to be. I might make it a little more extreme with some rotation and translation. Not rotating that way though, that feels a bit odd. That's not bad, but it is kind of creating this rocking motion where we can see the pivot of the gun a bit too obviously. Yeah, okay, this is much better. So you can see, well, it's still a bit pivoty, but it's feeling like it pivots more at the back, where the stock is. Yeah, that's maybe a bit too on the nose. Bring it down. Yeah, okay. And rather than feeling like it's pivoting from some arbitrary point, it'll feel like we're kind of pulling down, and this whole group of objects here is kind of pivoting from more where the stock is being shouldered in either the armpit or the elbow, which actually that works out pretty well posing wise, sitting in the elbow. Doesn't necessarily have to physically exactly be rotating from there, it just needs to feel like that from the camera view, and that'll give it a little bit more of a realistic kind of weight. At least that's the hope. Yeah. Okay, mag out time. So after that hits maybe frame 16, so I'll keep frame 14, 16, we will bring the mag out a little bit. Do I have any? No. So the translation isn't angled exactly to the the angle of the mag, but it's going to be pretty fast, so we're not too fussed about it. And then frame 17. Pull it out. Maybe give it a little bit of rotation coming down. It's going to be pretty fast. Maybe I don't want it to be angling down to the bottom of the screen too early. I think I want to go out first. Then off screen. Excuse me. On the tail end of a cold, so got a little bit of a cough. Now in this case, you could put the mag in world space. I'm trying to decide if I want to, because obviously if it's over here, that's still going to be following. So I might do that. So on this frame, I'll put it in world space. Okay. Let's see if we can do that. We have the parent constraint here, Gunmaster. Gonna key that. Next frame we want it to be in world space. Obviously if we turn it to 0 it's gonna teleport. So I'm gonna use my align tool for this. Where is it? Here it is. It's free. I'll link the Gumroad in the description. all my tools are free. If you want to, throw a couple dollars, you can, but I just make them accessible. And this has a bunch of transform options, so you can copy the position, and then we will turn off this constraint, key it, and then paste the position back. This is the kind of brute force way of animating constraints, though. If you really want a fast way to do it, I also have a space switcher tool where you can put in your constraint and your control, and it'll automatically handle switching for you. It's nice and easy. But for a one-off, sometimes it's fast just to do it manually. And then here, what we might do is turn that back on for a second, just grab that location, say that we liked it as is, and paste that back in. And for this one, I'm not too fussed, we'll just drag it down again. Okay, mag is out, and now if we move around the gun, mag stays in place. So that's that frame. I'll probably set a key here on the gun with probably a little anticipation, like a downwards, but I don't like that stock. Moving. And we're going to go upwards now, pulling back. We've been pulling down with the mag and then it's free, so we'll pull back a little bit. That is very intense. Okay. Just seeing if I can get some nice barrel rotation. Well, roll rotation. I've got to say, it's pretty daunting recording and then knowing every mistake is going to be in there. I can't mess anything up. Okay. And then keep reacting. Coming down a little bit now. Not bad. That is quite strong. Maybe if a gun is small and light as this, you might tone it down a little bit. But we want it to be a cool action. Okay. Oh, I like that. And then I'm going to have a taper off rotation here. Yep. We'll be able to add more detail later on in the spline. So I've made the spacing a little bit further away. See, we start with a 1 frame motion, and then there's a 2 frame gap for the next reaction, the next little overshoot or whatever rotation we're doing, and then there's a 3 frame gap between that and the next one, and so it kind of eases off and tapers off from most intense to least intense. Let's also maybe push in the mag release with a thumb. We want to animate that. Let's do, on this frame. It'll be angled in, pushed in. I'm not sure exactly how far it should be on this gun, but let's say that much. A little bit more. There we go. Almost flat out. Okay, it's in, and then on this frame, it's going to be out. In, out. Thumb. We'll key that in, and then that should be touching the mag. I want to get a little bit of rotation into all the joints, so not just this base one. Excuse me. Okay. Is that noticeable enough? On this frame, maybe I'll invert the thumb. So we'll go this way, pushing in extra strong. That. And then on this frame, we want it to be touching the gun. Oh. It can slip off that mag release and then just kind of press in. It's a bit of a strong angle, but it looks okay. From here, maybe I'll go out a little bit and then in with this. Maybe less intense there. Push it in a bit further. And then less intense here. A little bit of clipping is fine. Make sure we have a nice solid contact. Everyone always is scared of clipping. They see one pixel clipping and it's pointed out, but if you're working on a game and you have multiple meshes, you know, for different hand types, you're going to be either having clipping or gaps, and gaps are much worse than clipping, in my opinion. Okay. That gives a nice feeling, that inversion gives a nice feeling of pressure. So we push down and then push even further, but getting that kind of ball of the thumb onto the mag. Yeah. I feel like the gun reaction, it settles a bit too fast. Yeah, that's a bit better. Space it out more. And let's get a slightly different pose for our mag in. Mag in maybe 36, and we'll have a bit of space in here for slight reposition. Let's make it, maybe let's do kind of Modern Warfare style where the pose doesn't change too much. Between that and that. Maybe we'll go a little bit more towards camera. More upright. Maybe make sure this doesn't get too close. I'll bring it down actually. This is looking like it's pivoting from around here, which is not the most ideal. Maybe I'm rotating too much. Sometimes you just got to play around and see what works. That's feeling pretty good. Enough of a change that it's slightly different. Nothing's standing out as being like too locked off in screen space. Kind of pivoting from around here, but that's kind of hidden. And we can mask that even more with a little bit of a dip. Dip or a raise? Maybe a raise. Up. So raise, and then we'll do some rotation. Okay, we need to start rotating out this way a bit earlier. I like that. The translation starting first means that the tip kind of feels a little bit heavy, and then the tip starts rotating up, slightly delayed, and then this comes down a bit. Yeah. There is a bit of a gap here. Maybe we want to bring that closer just so there's no dead space. And then maybe make this a bit more extreme. Don't like that. Okay, I like how it's coming down here. Again, we're kind of feeling a little bit more stable at the stock, but I'm gonna scale it towards that last key. Yeah. Okay. And let's bring the mag back on screen. Fade down. Let's copy. Well, we want it to be following the gun as well. Let's get it on screen first. Let's copy this frame. Hopefully you can't hear the music. Let me check. My upstairs neighbor is playing some music. He really likes his songs. Okay. We'll get this kind of lined up. Something like that. Maybe here I want it to start coming on screen. Make sure we're lining it up correctly. It's pretty good. Okay, so that's going to be off. You need that to be a bit more accurate. Maybe I'll put it this way. Okay, that's not bad, but it is rotating in a kind of pivoty way. So maybe I'll bring it down a little. It's all about kind of fiddling around and finding what works. Okay, I do like that. This is pivoting basically from this contact point. It's not really contacting as such. But if I would bring this up, you can kind of imagine it hitting the metal here and then pivoting just a little bit for an impact. So if that's something that you need out of the motion, out of the action, then that could be good. I'm not liking how it's sliding though. I think that's alright. And then a mag in frame, so let's go here. And here, key that over one frame because we're going to copy this position with, with my align tool. Copy this position, go back to the parent constraint, key, set to 1, key, and paste the position back. Cool. So on this frame, it is not following the gun. And in this frame, we are following the gun. Okay, let's have a little bit of a reaction here of the impact of the mag. And then it's this frame, isn't it? Yeah. And then we probably want that to be in, actually, now that I think about it. So we'll copy this frame because we know that the mag is in. like that. And we'll give a little bit of maybe a push downwards because we're going to be anticipating that force, so we're going to move the gun downwards. I don't like how it goes up here though. Yeah, let's go down. Sometimes it's just fiddling around. Okay, I like that. That's pretty subtle. But I'm just getting a little bit of that reaction motion. And then we'll have the big impact here, next frame, I think. So we're down and then pushing into the gun. Maybe this way. Too much again. Overshoot the rotation a bit. Oh, you love it when it just goes first try. Like that is feeling pretty good. So we are anticipating downwards and inwards rotating as we push the mag, and then the impact from the mag hits, the top. At this frame, I would copy the proper mag in pose, because this is like slightly out, I believe. Slightly out, and then we'll paste that in. Full insertion, boom, there. With the gun, rotating, being pushed, and then a little bit of kind of counteraction, rotation, overshoot. Mostly rotation, not really translation. Oh, that feels good. All right. Basically just return to idle now. One thing I want to do, maybe at this point, maybe later, is get a little opening up of the thumb there during this reposition. That might be fun. So I'm going to key before and then after. Let's open it up a little bit. I think I did this for the AK reload, actually. Yeah, that for the blockout, that works totally fine. I like that. And the mag holding pose, I mean, usually it would be good to have it different from the mag out pose. Because this is just a really basic reload, I'm not too fussed, I don't think. One thing I will do though is make sure that we don't have the bullets showing, which is this control. Yeah, we probably want to hide that and have it empty, and then full for the new mag. So we'll do it while the mag is out. Pull this down. Just make sure that it's hidden. And then have the mag follow up. That has some, what is that? Ah, I see, because the bullets are following that. Okay, so I'll bring that even further down. Make sure it's not clipping through. Okay. And then the follower here. I'm not sure how high they go in mags. That would be something to research. Always good to make sure you're doing your research and doing things correctly and properly. That looks about right. Key those two, copy that. Frame 0. Empty mag coming out. And let's maybe zero this out. See how far up that goes. Needs to come up a little bit more. I mean, obviously it's not going to be a 3-round mag, but just to satisfy our brains, to have it correctly laid out. And then it should be sitting roughly like that. Peeking out the top. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to copy that while this is off screen. Let's key that and then paste that so it just happens quickly off screen. We can probably delete this key then, and this one. Nice. So mag out, empty, new mag. Cool. And now we're going to start dropping down the gun. Maybe extend this a little bit. What kind of length do we want? 60, 70 frames? 70, maybe a little bit more with the settle. We'll see. Dropping down. Can close that. That might be a bit fast. Yeah, that's a bit better. Dropping down, and we'll put our hand on there to catch it. It's maybe too extreme. But also, you know, it's not bad to try extreme things because you don't want stuff to be too reserved and too muted as far as the action goes. So doing something strong can be good. I'm going to copy the idle pose, put it somewhere there. And let's do a little bit of easing to see kind of roughly the direction it goes. Okay, but I do want to kind of dip the tip of the gun down, maybe rotate this way. Now we have the kind of rear of the gun, that back sight, going up, even though we kind of overall want to feel like we're dipping down. So I don't want to do that if I can, although this is getting quite low. So whatever we can do to make it feel like the gun isn't, the back of the gun isn't raising up while we're trying to dip down, if that makes sense. I'm kind of going roughly in 2-frame increments. It's a bit even, but it's nice and fast at least. And then we can always drag things around if we need. Gonna go forwards to re-shoulder. Forwards more here. How does it look from... Okay, now that's feeling like we're forwards, and then we kind of pivot from the stock hitting the shoulder. Obviously it's not touching the shoulder, but kind of that vibe of pivoting like this is pretty good. It is coming back further, so we might need to adjust the whole thing. That's going to come back. I want the stock to feel a bit more stable, so I'm going to bring it up and do a little bit more kind of rotation towards the end. I want to feel like the stock is stable. Yeah, there we go. And then the tip of the gun is kind of settling a little bit more. Maybe a little bit of rotational settle. Sometimes people overdo return to idles. I mean, nice and direct is always good. But you want to have it feeling natural, punchy, fast for the player. I think that's pretty good. If we track the tip of the gun, the first drop it kind of goes to the right and down, and then it curves back to the center, and then around left, and then up, and kind of loops. So if we were to draw it out, it would kind of come around like this in a kind of spiral. Obviously a fairly tight spiral, not anything crazy, but just enough that it feels like a natural path to take for something that has weight and momentum, you know? Pretty good, pretty good. Then we'll just do the left hand. Excuse me. I will... And look, we don't have any keys through all of here on the left hand. That's pretty good. It's just the mag moving. Mag in. Maybe releasing a little bit here. And I want to be grabbing it at the bottom so that we use the hand to help lift up the gun. So I'm going to key that there and copy, I suppose. And also let's do everything actually. We'll key everything there and then copy that. Probably this elbow is something that we want to be in a much more normal spot, I would say. Back to idle as well. Yeah. Just so it's not too extreme. Okay. And then we'll have this hand. And the upstairs neighbor is really enjoying his music. Opening up. We could even copy the frame from back here if it's acceptable. Something nice and direct. I could have the thumb kind of start to free itself here. Don't want it to be clipping though. And obviously we would want to kind of fit it so that it's not kind of... We could wrap it around the mag because this way it's kind of fitting into this hole here and I'm not sure if I like that. So what we could do is take this a little... and curl that in. And this is one case where I might consider translating this thumb because the fingers are in a pretty good spot. I don't know if that's exactly what I want to do though, because there's quite a gap here still. Maybe we'll want to adjust the wrist position. But don't be too afraid of a little translation to get, you know, what you need. Just not entirely convinced if that's the right choice for this. Okay, something like that when it's gripping is good. Yeah, I think I will move the whole thing. So that thumb is hugging it a bit nicer. Feels better. We can curl this in. This might have to open up a bit. Or maybe we can get away with that clipping in a little. Yeah, that's fine. A little bit of a gap going on here. I'm not too fussed with that. I think it is feeling okay. Other fingers. Do we want to have it more open? We do want it to kind of wrap around though. So maybe I will wrap it. Get a bit tighter. Cool. This one. Curl in. Not bad. It's pretty good. This index is kind of odd. Let's see if we can maybe rotate this metacarpal to give it some breathing room. So we open this up, and then we have a bit more rotation we can give to that. And then we can pull this out a little bit. And then curl this. It's not the greatest. This might be a case where we do want to do a little bit of translation, just ever so slightly. I don't like it, but it is giving us the result that we need. As long as, you know, the rig or the mesh can handle it decently. Okay, not bad. That's feeling a bit more natural. Okay, let's select all, copy that. What we might want to do is make sure that it is keyed. Yeah, let's just do all the fingers and the meta and the thumb. Fingers, okay, well, so we'll copy this and we'll make sure it's off screen. And also you can see, even though it's the same key, it does have some rotation of the tangents. So we'll just flatten those, make them plateau. Thumb, okay, so thumb stops there. We'll just copy that a little further. Metacarpals. Okay, we'll copy this one again to roughly frame 26. And then the new mag and pose will have everything. So we'll key that, bring that earlier. Cool, so you can see it happen off screen. And that is all fine, that's staying. That thumb, we'll just have to delete those keys. What we'll do, grab all, copy that to here. That is feeling quite nice as a mag and pose actually, I do have to say. And it's different. We have the thumb, you know, on the mag out, and then a more solid grip there, pushing the new mag in. And then maybe on this frame we would start to open the thumb up. Here I'm going to copy, I'm going to set a key, and let's copy this pose. Make sure it's keyed. And that'll give us a good starting point for our return to idle. It's possible we might need to adjust it, get rid of some clipping, but honestly, that is in a pretty good state. As is, we could maybe open up the thumb a little more if we wanted to do it, you know, not like that. Something more open, but I like it. I like angling the fingers downwards as well. We could even still have the thumb settling on this frame. So we'll key that, and here just open it up a little bit. Is that a different frame? The index finger, of course. We will keep it out here and start returning it here. key, copy. Obviously it's just a single pose right now. We could give it a little bit of a transition if we want. Finger coming in around there. So I would start to pull that in. Yeah, that works. We have a blockout. I have no idea how long that was. Half an hour? An hour? Let's see. We've been recording for 55 minutes. All right. I would say that's a fairly typical blockout length. Like, it depends on the complexity. If you're doing some crazy action, it might take, a few hours. 1 hour for something simple like this is, not bad. Would be a bit faster if I wasn't talking through it, but yeah, there we go. I think that's going to be it for today, and then I'll pick up another day and continue animating unedited and do the spline. Alrighty, it is another day. Time to get started on the spline for this reload animation. The first thing I want to do before I turn off stepped preview is just to make sure I've got some copied pairs. Copied pairs is a pretty handy workflow. So for example, if I have a pose that I really like, the exact pose of like this left hand, I'm going to want to copy those keys to the last point where it's going to be held. So if I select all that stuff, let's say over here, we've got the hand opening up and I've got it keyed here. If I didn't have it keyed here, it would still look the same because we have this fist pose down the bottom, I believe. Yeah, we have this fist pose down the bottom on frame 28. So if I were to delete this, it looks the same. And when we're blocking out, it might act fine. But for this whole section, if you turn off the stepped preview and you're going to be splining it out, it's actually going to be opening up to this pose. So if I turn it off, you can see slowly drifting into the next pose, and it kind of makes the spline a little bit more work in terms of cleanup. So for the copied pairs, I'm basically just going to copy this frame over to the last place I want the pose held. Or it's the same as just kind of setting a key on everything that's, keyed here. Because when you key in stepped preview, it'll key, the blocked out pose rather than the spline that's underneath, which is pretty handy. I think for the gun, I can select. For the gun, what is going on there? Okay. There's nothing held for too long that I think I want to copy because I did add a fair few keys for each pose, plus like anticipations and reactions and things. So I'm not too fussed with that. Left hand, like I said, this section is good to have a copied pair. Yeah, it should be fine. I think we've already keyed that. So it should be good. Yeah, not too much needing to be done. Okay, so in this case now, I guess we can turn off stepped preview and see what the spline is looking at without having touched it. And already it's in a pretty reasonable state. Like sometimes, if you haven't done due diligence in the blockout, you might have a lot of work to do and the timing might be all strange. But since we've, made a solid blockout, put keys in the right places, there's actually not a whole lot to be cleaned up. Obviously, some certain things are glitching out, but pretty good. I have a hair in my mouth. Okay. So the first thing that I'm seeing is this left hand is, going crazy. Let's see if that is the mag rotations. And yep, it is. We probably just want to set all of these to default. And then we'll fix the gimbal lock after that. But it's nice to have these, not as crazy tangents, because the rest of that is pretty fine. It's just over here we have some gimbal lock. So if you're not aware, so if you hold E and left click, you can change between object, world, gimbal. So for the gimbal rotation, right now it is, doing something that we don't like. It looks like that Z-axis is flipping around. And overall, we're not running into any like locking, at least. But it is, something is getting flipped around. Obviously, if it was something like that, these two axes would be aligned, and we don't want that. Overall, it's pretty good. We just need to make sure that this doesn't flip around, I imagine, because these two are fine. Yeah. And that's mostly caused by this switch here, because we're going from, I have a parent constraint there. Yeah, we're going between two different spaces here. And so that mag has been, space switched. And obviously from the snapping that we did, the calculation decided to go negative in this axis. So we can just bump that up. I like using this value nudge in animbot, which basically, like, I set it to 90 degrees, so I can just click 4 times and it'll, spin 360 around. Or, if you need just 180. So just by bumping that up by a full 360, we've we've essentially done an Euler filter, kind of. Like if I were to select this and then click the Euler filter, or go up to curves Euler filter, it would do a similar thing, but it is a bit more prone to breaking. So if we just do 360, oh, that is 360. Hang on. Oh, I've already gone up once. So one. Yeah, that's how we were. Yeah, okay. I didn't undo correctly before. So this is the pose we were at, and we do 360 with Euler filter. That'll take it up to the same result as, adding 360 here. So it's basically just, I guess, kind of like in Blender, you can type in and add, like, do plus 360. I don't think you can do that in Maya, unfortunately. But we're, fixing that from flipping around. Yeah, much better. Let's take a look at how that looks. Yeah, no issues whatsoever. Obviously, it's a bit slow coming in, but all right. The first thing I think I want to do is maybe just the overall weapon movement. So we'll select that, go into the graph editor. I love using the graph editor for polish. It's great because you can kind of get a little bit more out of the keys that you do have without having to set more keys. I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit. That's bigger. And let's take a look at what we have. All right. Probably the y-axis is what I would look at first. That's going to be my up and down. So we're dipping down here, going up, and then kind of easing down. That's the impact from the mag being pulled out. It's pretty linear right now. Like it just kind of hits a wall there. Gets quite flat there. So I'm thinking we want to maybe let this ease down a little bit. The translation up, it's not bad. Let's look at the x-axis. Okay, so we're pulling to the left ever so slightly, and the right. Maybe I want to make this overshoot a little. Still a little bit sick, so I've got a little cough still. This might be in the rotation where a lot of the detail is sorted. I think I might want some more translation to happen here. Maybe let's dip it. Let's try dipping it down a bit more, actually. That's a bit much. Let's see what up looks like. That feels a lot more like a reposition, but it is quite strong. Okay, let's take a look at the rotation actually, because the tip is a bit straight, I think. Where are we? There we are. I probably want it to swing, okay, outwards. Could do. Outwards and then slightly left. Now that just kind of feels like rotation for the sake of rotation. It's a bit too kind of swingy, you know, left and right. I'll probably reduce that. And let's maybe make this impact a bit sharper. Okay, so it's just one frame of pulling. And then I think we definitely want to stop this from being too flat. So we'll make it overshoot. Outwards, maybe quite a lot. The Z rotation, I think I want to do a lot of right here. We're going to rotate inwards. Let's go outwards for one frame. Maybe a bit strong. We don't want it to be too crazy. But it's nice having something that's slightly high frequency because it is going to be softened if you are bringing this into a game engine. That's feeling nice. Too much of a reaction here. Yeah, let's soften that. I do like the frequency, but we don't want to overdo it. That's much better. Okay. So as we grab the mag, we are rotating outwards and then back in as we apply some pressure. And then starting to pull. That's rotating inwards. And then the reaction, gun goes the opposite way because we're pulling now. And then we settle back this way. Nothing too high frequency here. We're not doing like a big zigzag. Keeping it subtle. This is flat, so maybe we'll give it a bit of a curve. Okay, let's take a look at the x-axis. Do I like how that is? Down, then up. See if we dip it even more. That's a bit extreme. I mean, it is a light gun, but we don't want it to feel like it can just rotate fast. And in the polish, in the splining, sometimes I just kind of move the keys around, see what works, see what doesn't. One thing that I'm looking at is this rear sight here. I want it to have a fairly natural path. Like it's fairly flat here, and then it kind of arcs down and to the right, which is pretty good. It's not like jiggling or doing anything strange. It's fairly direct but smooth, so I'm liking that. Okay, let's dip down a little bit more here, I think. Too strong. Okay, I like that. So we do kind of ease off of the X pitch here. Kind of softens off. And then we pull down one frame, pulling up. Maybe we could overshoot that a little bit. I'm going to rotate this. Why are you not rotating? Select all. There we go. Just angle that tangent a little bit. So we go up. And then this is flat again, like the others. Give that a bit of an angle. So it dips down. Don't know if I want that necessarily. I might do. It is quite bouncy in that case. But we do have to fix obviously the translation in this next section. But okay, I'm happy enough with that. Let's look at the translation here. It's obviously, it jumps up and then hits a wall. Just goes boop. So we want to ease this a little bit more. Maybe make that a little bit. I do like that. Dips down and then it feels like it kind of settles in a bit of a pocket. We'll just give it some rotation to support it. X-axis. Let's see. Pretty smooth. I do like, see I've brought this a bit further. It kind of, as the reposition happens, it's almost like there's a bit of sliding into place here, which is not bad. Maybe we'll, yeah. And we'll support that with a little bit of Y rotation. This way. But we don't want it to do that. There we go. Just a little impact, mag hitting. Obviously we'll polish the mag a little bit. I'm liking that. And in this section here, I'm also looking at the arc of the gun tip. I'm wanting it to be pretty smooth. You can see in all these actions, like it's curving around in a path, kind of sweeping. We're not having it move in straight lines. This, I would probably want it to be a little bit smoother, but it is making like a little loop-the-loop. Loop-de-loop. You can see there. That's not bad. Pretty trackable. Just looking out for what might need to be adjusted. Honestly, it's working pretty well. Let's do this mag in maybe. Well, let's do a little bit of Z rotation here. It's quite smooth there. I like that. Maybe we'll come in a little bit more. Settling in. Yeah, okay. Just bring that down. I might make this smoother. Okay, I like that, I like that. And then Actually, between here and here, let's try and make it a bit more of a impact. Okay, and then we have this, which is pretty good. Let's do a little bit of Y rotation. Yeah, it's quite smooth. Maybe we'll start to ease into that impact. And we'll overshoot this. See how that feels. It's a bit too kind of left and right. I don't want it to, go back this way too much. Yeah, I like the feeling of like pushing the mag in, and then we kind of keep traveling to the right. We don't kind of, go back. Obviously there's still a little bit of a bump here, but that just gives it some texture. But overall the settle is to the right. And I mean, we really haven't done that much with the keys so far for this master gun control, but it's already feeling, quite nice. And that just goes to show, what a good blockout and, having keys in the right places early on can do for, the polish process later on. It just makes things much easier rather than having to rework things just because the bones, the skeleton of the whole thing is quite solid. Let's do a little bit of this return to idle. Translation will be where a lot of this comes to life. So we're going this. So this is actually going up, but it feels like we're going down here, just because the rotation, the pitch downwards is happening. Let's just give that a bit of an angle. And then this is where it's going to be a bit smoother. And that's quite an overshoot. Okay, so I'll make that a little more subtle, and then this X rotation is really strong. Still want it to kind of ease into that. Maybe we'll make this not as much. And I don't like the Z. Yeah, that's way too out there. So let's push this and then bring it back in towards the end. Maybe that is way too much. Make this earlier. Yeah, and then let's try overshooting it. I would probably extend this just to give it a little bit more life. Because it does finish quite fast, obviously, if you're trying to get, to the end of the animation in a game and then blend to the idle, you'd probably want to start blending as it kind of hits the shoulder, just so that people can have a good amount of control. But yeah, just having that extra bit of settle is always nice. Feels nice and bouncy. And this is just the y-axis. We haven't extended any of the other keys. Let's see if the X needs anything. If we set a key there, Maybe we'll drag this over. Bit strong. Bring it up. I do like how that feels. It makes the whole thing kind of move together. Let's add a little bit more roll settle here. That's feeling quite nice actually. I do want it to feel a bit more like it's getting shouldered, so let's look at this z-axis, which is our forwards and backwards. And generally it's not touched a whole lot in the animation. We probably do want to give it some polish though. So let's maybe move forwards. Yeah, pushing away. Bringing back. Not too fussed about this because it doesn't do a whole lot to the animation. You just need a little bit to give it some kind of depth life. Excuse me. Here's where I would probably start moving it forwards again. It's feeling pretty good, really. Just going to ease that a bit inwards. Yeah, I like that. And then forwards, maybe we'll keep going forwards here. Make this a bit later. Boy, that's a bit too intense, I would say. Do we want to keep moving forwards here? If we do, we would probably have to adjust the rotation a little bit. See, this is already changing in depth quite a lot, and I'm not sure if I like that. That's kind of more what I'm aiming for. Yeah, this is quite cartoony, I would say. Maybe we'll bring it in. And I would say the rotation also needs some adjusting because it's the gun tip is kind of quite linear here. Yeah, alright. Let's add a key to the bottom here just so that it has a nice anchor point. And then give it a bit more settle. That's feeling nice and bouncy. Maybe too bouncy. The X rotation I think I want to adjust here actually. Let's keep it higher. And then make it a bit later. Okay, that's too late. I think where they are is good, we just need to adjust the angles. Maybe it's down a little too much actually. Keep it a bit more stable. Could work. Let's try try pushing this. Okay, here's where I would probably want to swing outwards more, I would say. And then in again. This is getting to be pretty stylized. I'm not sure if I fully like it. It is feeling nice though. Obviously this is just the gun motion. The left hand we would adjust to be nicer because you can't really tell it's transitioning from here to here. We would probably make this open hand pose a bit better, have the thumb, you know, close around over here. Try the rotation being a bit more down here. Still feeling like it should be, yeah, slightly delayed like that. That's better. Cool. So I'm looking at like where the stock is, where the rear sight is. It's coming forwards here, then coming backwards and hitting a bit of a wall, but still kind of being a bit soft. And then settling upwards, a little bit of that settle. In some cases you might want the stock to be a little bit more stable, but in this case it kind of feels like, you know, the shoulder is giving way a little bit. You're kind of rotating and shifting. So it feels dynamic enough. Actually, one thing we haven't done is the X translation. That will help. So we're going to the right. Maybe we'll go to the right a bit more. Stay slightly to the right. And then come into the left. Maybe this is too much. Yeah, it doesn't feel informed. Cool. That's a bit better. And we come to the right, sorry, to the left. Right, and then left, and then, yeah. A little bit extreme. Let's soften that. I like that, actually. Let's soften it ever so slightly. So we are coming to the right at the start of the reposition for the return to idle, and then we swing to the left, and then we settle back to the right, and we just have a tiny little overshoot here, settling left again, and that gives us just some nice extra dynamics. It gives the gun tip a little bit more of a curve in screen space, and the whole thing just kind of feels like it flows. Oh, I like that. And obviously this kind of motion kind of, it feels like the dynamic, like the weapon sway that you would find in games. Like if you move the camera around, you would have this kind of settle happening after, you know, you stop moving the camera and then the gun sways back into the center of its, you know, to its pose. And so emulating that in the animation just kind of feels nice and natural. I really like that. Let's probably do the mag, I would say, and then the left hand. You could do either of them. This is shaping up though. So the mag. Let's take a look at that. Oh, what's going on there? Probably my evaluation mode. Okay. So the mag comes out. I'm pretty happy with that pacing. It could use a bit of rotation maybe, but being fairly straight also feels quite tactical, I would say. So maybe let's try giving it some rotation. Just gonna go to object mode, rotate this way. That gives it a kind of nice little mini arc there. Not against that, but not sure. Let's look at it in the viewport. It could kind of rotate this way a little, just so that it's a bit more naturally arcing out of the mag well. And that's feeling, you know, slightly straighter than it was just before, but still, yeah, there's a little bit of an arc there. Not bad, not bad. The mag in is where, like, this definitely needs to be faster, I would say. But with a little bit more time living in this mag in adjustment pose. Let's see what it's doing here. Okay, so it stops here, starts moving here, and it's quite slow through here. So this, move this across. What's that gonna do? That makes the pacing a bit better. I would almost say this whole thing needs to move across though. Just so it's faster. And then this feels fast. That's pretty direct. A little too direct. I like this kind of little overshoot it does here. And then obviously it's not moving at all here. So we would probably want to bring it in, give it a little bit of rotation. How does that feel? I like that. It kind of feels like it's starting to insert, but there is some sliding still. Let's bring it forwards and up. Yeah, I'm just looking at like this line, this edge, bottom edge, and I'm wanting that to feel quite stable. The whole thing, I could probably move backwards. Like I would, yeah, because you can see this edge here is further back when it's actually lined up. So I would grab these three. I'm using global offset just to move all of these keys at once. So animate feature. But it's similar to like paste connect type thing. Yeah, so I've just moved all of these three a little back. Overall, the whole thing is much more consistent. Now it feels like it's, you know, it's lining up and it's kind of slowly, there's some friction and it's being pushed in. I like that. Is this the right pacing though? It kind of comes up and then it rotates around. It is kind of a bit of an arc, which is nice. But this is then up. So I'm wondering, does this frame need to be different? Or is this kind of lining up? Does this, maybe this frame needs to be a bit of a, like a adjustment. Now the wrist is coming up a bit too much here. I don't like that. I'm just trying to get a nice path on the wrist first before worrying about this tip. This frame, I think. But then the whole thing translates, so I'm not a huge fan of that. maybe then, I'll delete that again. This whole thing needs to come up. We have the wrist rotating, which I don't like. Essentially what I'm trying to get feeling good is this wrist path. Right now it's just coming up. I want it to arc a little bit more. But I don't want this wrist to just rotate by itself, so we don't want the translation to be too similar to this final place. This is where we're kind of deviating a little bit from the block out, because some things, you know, you block out and it's fine, but then you kind of want to finish the arc. This is kind of nice. It's a bit direct, but we've got the tip of the mag kind of rotating and arcing in and kind of feeling like it's quite direct and tactical. Bit too evenly spaced though. The wrist is maybe a little too straight. That's a bit better. Now the whole thing, I would say, needs to be faster. So let's grab these two. And let's maybe introduce a little extra rotation. Let's say we've pulled it out of the like the mag belt or the taco or whatever, and it needs to be rotated and reoriented just a little bit more. I don't like this little rotation I just did. Now, some people like lately to animate the tip of the mag hitting the mag well as like a little misalignment. I think that's a bit overdone these days, but you know, if you want to do that, you can. But it is good to have some kind of contact texture happening. That's coming out way too much. Just kind of playing around, having some densely populated keys in here and getting it feeling like it's, you know, something tangible. It's all very minute adjustments. I'm liking this. This, I'm not entirely sure, but it is feeling pretty good. Let's take a look in the viewport. So it comes up, lines in. You know, it's maybe a little bit misaligned, but then as he pushes in, it becomes lined up. It is quite jittery from this angle. I think in the camera view it looks better. But I don't know if I want this frame here. It's coming backwards. That's a little bit better. But it's still very jittery. Now, obviously, you shouldn't care too much about what the viewport looks like. because the camera is, you know, what you need it to be referencing at the end of the day, because that's what you're going to be viewing it through. That's pretty good. But still, it's nice to make sure that something works in other views. Because maybe you're going to be converting this from 1p to 3p for third person animations. Or, you know, there's some other situation where you might need it to be a little bit more accurate. I am liking this. That's pretty straightforward. Let's do the left hand now. This is a pretty direct opening up and grabbing. I do like direct, but the thumb is kind of clipping here. Let's try. This is a good place for the rest, but maybe here we need it to be further out. And then the thumb needs to start reaching up because it kind of hits a wall between here and here. Thumb also, wait, let's look at my settings. Animation parallel, let's make it DG. That'll just make it a little bit more stable. Open this up. Now that's clipping. Okay. And then maybe this could be opened up further. Just because it's going to need to reach and hit that. Okay. And obviously we don't want it just sliding in like that. So we see the thumb starting to open up. Not bad. Is it too much? Hard to tell. It is nice seeing that kind of open up though. I do think I want these fingers to be a little more open. Probably here. Key that. And then rotate them up a little bit too. Just these first controls. Just to be a little bit more natural. Yeah. Let's give this a little bit of a extra opening up. And then I want this wrist to be a bit faster grabbing on because the fingers close down while the wrist is moving. So let's make this earlier. How's it looking in the graph editor? Let's ease it. Just so these couple frames, it's much slower grabbing on. How do I like the path of everything? This index finger is kind of sticking. Like if I look at where it is here, and here is quite similar. So it just kind of stays in one spot a lot, and then it kind of snaps closed. I would probably want it to be less whatever this is. Let's maybe make it stand up a bit more. Yeah, a little bit more open. And then, do we want it to be extra open? Probably start closing in here. Now it is super stuck on this frame. I don't like that. That tip was just in the same spot in screen space. This is a little nicer, but I don't know if I'm fully happy with it. Okay, I do like this because we are a bit curved here, and then we straighten up, and then we close back in. And pathwise, it's a bit jumpy, but it is kind of flowing downwards in a kind of curve. Thumb, let's open up the thumb a little bit here. Maybe I want to close this tip. Do I want to close it? And then open it up, but then rotate this middle control in further. So it's kind of bent. Bent, and then we push down a little bit. I hope this is followable. A lot of kind of polish and splining is just wanting to make things feel a certain way and just kind of moving certain keys around until it gets there. Now what I'm seeing between these two frames is the tip is moving a lot and this middle section isn't. I'm not sure if I like that because it feels a bit static. We do probably want this to start rotating as we apply a little bit of pressure, ever so slightly, like this. So this would rotate inwards. Yeah, not bad. This can come out ever so slightly. It's feeling all right. Maybe the thumb is a bit too noticeably moving in camera view though. A little jittery here. It's possible we could make it happen faster. Like this, okay, yeah, this rotation here where it inverts, so it's pressing in this way, and then this frame it's pressing in. We want it to happen like over one frame, I would say. Yeah. Or just happen earlier. No, by this frame we already want to be pushing like that. Yeah. And then sliding off a little bit as we start to want to make the thumb grab the magazine. That feels pretty good. There's obviously two stages here with the thumb. We have the thumb grabbing on and applying a little bit of pressure. And then we have the press where the thumb inverts and releases the mag. It does feel Like it needs a little bit of extra attention though. Do we want to give the mag a little bit of release, actually? That's a good question. Do we want to do something like, as we press, it comes out a little more? Like it just starts to get released. Delete that key. I think we already have some of that happening on this frame, but we'll make it a little bit earlier. Yeah. A little bit of sliding happening here. Let's try it even earlier. Okay, one other thing I want to maybe do is take a look at the arc of the thumb just as it changes direction here. It's creating a kind of V shape, and I maybe want it to be smoother. So maybe here we rotate it more. Here we open it up. How does that look? That's a bit better. It does kind of snake through here. It creates like an S shape. One thing we could do is kind of increase the grip on the fingers as the thumb presses. Could be a nice little bit of texture. But that could be like shifting the hand even, and the grip ever so slightly. So we settle in here. And then as the pressure increases, maybe what I might do is use the temp pivot for animate. I'll place it somewhere there, just as a nice rotation point, and we kind of angle in a little bit further, ever so slightly. I mean, we could do it manually, but temp pivot is quite handy. I do like that. Just copy that. It's pretty subtle. And then we could grab the left fingers. Maybe here we'll key them to be as they are. And then here we will ease them slightly left to be a little bit less enclosed. So they, tighten in. Okay, I think we've spent enough time on the thumb. It's working. I can't say I'm the happiest with it. Like if I look at this gap here, it changes because of this piece rotating outwards. Maybe I do want to keep it there. Keep it in a little bit more. This is also rotating. Actually, it's this one. Yeah, I'm just doing some slight adjustments so that it feels a bit more stable on that mag release. Okay, that's fine. One thing I just remembered that I did not do in the blockout is this little mag release will actually probably click back when the mag is inserted as it goes past that little notch that holds it or whatever. So we can, over probably one frame as we insert, do something like that. Click. If we want to give it a bit of realistic motion, we could have it do a little bounce there. Bonk. That is probably a bit on the noticeable side. Let's make it faster. Yeah. Pretty fast, but, physical thing that does happen. Okay. Hand on the mag in. I think we just keep this pose as is. What we could do is maybe close the thumb around. So let's say we want to close it down here. Let's maybe have a bit of an open pose on the thumb. Yeah, like we've just grabbed it and we're kind of positioning our grip around it. That is pretty open. Okay. Something like that. And it would close in. Not too sure if I like that pose, but let's just see how it feels to start with. Yeah. Just something subtle so that we have a bit more movement, And then I'm sure if we wanted to get extra detail going, we could kind of tighten everything in, between these frames, but I'm not too fussed with that. Maybe here we'll just, we'll rotate everything. In. So it has a bit of pressure there, and then loosening as well. And then this is the hand that we want to do, some good polish on. We want to open it up a little earlier and obviously not have the thumb clip through. Maybe on 46, we will start easing it. But we will bring it backwards. Fingers and thumb. Have we got keys on the metacarpals? We do. Might as well select all of these. Gonna key there and then start opening it up further. That thumb is going crazy. We do want it to clear. Okay, something like that. Pinky needs to clear the mag as well. Okay. How is that looking? Opening up, cool. The thumb kind of unwrapping around the mag. I like that. this, between these two frames, that's going to be clipping in the subframes, so I'm not the happiest about that. So maybe we will bring this wrist out a bit more, rotate it this way a little bit more. Okay. How does it look? Oh, we're just sneaking in there. Look at that. That's pretty sneaky. Zoop. Just through that little gap there. I'll take it. That's fine. And then maybe this needs to go. It is nice how the thumb is like continuously curving and moving upwards. I was thinking maybe this hand needs to come up more. But if we did that, then it would kind of come up and then move down again. And we don't necessarily want to do that, I don't think. Like if I did this and I made it quite open, you know, then it goes up and then down again. And it's okay, but I don't think I want that. I want it to keep coming up. And maybe this frame, it's going to be a little bit closer to that idle pose. The thumb, I'm probably going to open it a little bit more because it kind of goes to the right and then the hand rotates to the left with the gun there. So let's try opening up the thumb a little more. Something a little more extreme. And then this one as well. Pretty extreme, but this could pay off. Yeah. Because then we have the thumb closing down. It doesn't technically raise higher because the wrist is still moving upwards. You can see the wrist is moving upwards here, but the thumb is kind of making a circle around, arcing around, and then closing down as the gun comes up. And that's feeling pretty natural, like we're reaching and closing in. The hand, I maybe want to adjust because here it's quite a big change versus here there's not much translation happening. But it does feel, it feels direct. Maybe we will come outwards and forwards and down a little more on this frame, just so there's a bit more translation happening, but keeping the thumb arc fairly the same. And then, yeah, I'll maybe adjust that. That's quite wide. Generally, I wouldn't want the hand to be too far away when it's reaching, because it kind of feels like you're actively like trying to reach for it rather than just naturally letting the hand do its thing, you know? So maybe this is coming out too far and we got to stay a bit more reserved. Now it's feeling like it goes up and then down. I mean, you look at this and you think, okay, it's working, but what I'm seeing is like between these few frames, this wrist section is just jumping around in screen space everywhere. It's like doing little zigzags. And what I want is for it to be a bit smoother, you know? Like if I turn on the motion trail, like it's not smooth, is it? Especially because towards the end here, we're following the gun. So we want it to maybe naturally, you know, curve around. So it could be that we bring this a bit further around. And maybe this frame we want to adjust. So we'll set a key here. So we're definitely grabbing the gun. And then here, maybe we want to, let me zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Maybe this trail here, because this curve here is it following the gun. This is where we want to kind of swing around, and I want that to be probably smoother. So this is a bit of a curve. And then this is upwards, which does create, you know, this arc here, but it is quite a bit of a jump from here, which I don't necessarily like. So maybe this frame, we want to start lifting this wrist up, but counter rotating this way. Oh, it is quite a big jump still from here to here. Let me zoom out again. This is a bit too zoomed in for my liking. Where are we? Something like that. Cool, okay. Just these little bits of finesse can go a long way. Like you might think, okay, we're going to spend 10 minutes just doing this tiny little bit of the rest, but it adds up. And when I say adds up, I mean like it increases the brain's subconscious vibe of how things flow. Like you might not be able to tell exactly what's going on that makes it flow better, but this okay, I'm liking this a bit more. The thumb is still pretty good, it's kind of arcing around, but this wrist kind of pulls away. The thumb clears, and then, you know, this is quite an extreme change. But it's just not as zigzaggy through the section. I'll turn off that motion trail. And obviously this is, you know, really fast. But if it's interpolating, it's going to be slower. Look at that. Look how smooth that is. The wrist comes off and just goes in. It's not zigzagging anywhere. It's just kind of smoothly going. I like it. We've spent a lot of time on this. All right, reload overall. How is it feeling? The only thing we haven't touched really is the index finger and the thumb. The index, I'm not too fussed. It just opens up. You don't even really see it, and then it closes back in again. I don't think I'm going to touch that because that's fine. But this right thumb could be faster. So let's grab both of the controls, because I assume we haven't animated this. No, we haven't. Just these two. That's where that is. Opens up. A little on the slow side. In the blockout, it was fine. I would probably want to make that close faster. And we can offset one of these. This is the middle joint. Maybe the tip. I always like offsetting the tip to be a little bit later. Too late. And let's make it a bit faster. We can even probably press it in a little bit and out. I mean, it's not going to be visible as such. It's kind of off screen, but if we have camera motion, maybe it will end up on screen. And it's just a little bit of extra texture. Okay. This return to idle is quite fast in the grand scheme of things. But we do want to, get back into the action. It's possibly just these few frames that are a little on the fast side. We'll see how it looks with camera animation, and then maybe we'll adjust it. Could possibly just grab a couple of these keys. Like if I grab all the keys, and it's, let's say, between here and here is quite fast. It does make sense though. But let's just say, okay, let's make the frame length 75 now. Between here and here, we'll drag all of this across by one frame. And then here and here. Okay, not just that one frame was it, actually. We might need to adjust that wrist again, but a little bit more breathing room. I like it. Wrist. Let's take a look at that one again, sorry. So now this is coming up a lot. Let's key this because I like that. We have a nice kind of curve going there. But this one needs to be a bit softer. And then now rotates so that thumb is not clipping. Could even do more. That's probably going to clip, isn't it? Yeah. And in the viewport, it's a pretty good path overall, I would say. It is a bit rotatey through here. Like we've pulled in on this Z-axis a bit much. Okay. Probably still the thumb clipping. Yeah, it is going to be happening fast. I'm not super against this. Like this is working, it's flowing. That wrist is pretty good now. Turn off that motion path. Okay, and then what's our last frame? Is it still 70? 71. Let's make it 70. Let's just drag that across. Make sure everything, yep, nothing else past 70. I'm going to put that back. Edit this one. Okay, we are in a pretty good state. Came together pretty fast, honestly. The blockout really gave us a solid starting point. If I was to nitpick, we could maybe add a little bit of index finger motion here just so it's not static, but I think it's fine. Camera animation. So I don't have a control out in the distance. I know a lot of people who use Blender like having control for that. Honestly, it's basically the same, just using a direct control. The only difference being you're not going to be doing as much posing in the viewport, like translating it around. I mean, you could rotate it around, but I prefer animating in the graph editor. It's just nice and fast, simple. So we have it keyed. I'm going to key again roughly at frame 60. We want that to be finished. Maybe again on 70. First action. Let's look a little to the right, I would say. So we have our 3 axes. X is going to be pitch. Obviously, it's quite strong. X is pitch. Y is going to be our yaw. And Z is going to be our roll. I'm going to start with the yaw. So we're going to look to the right, I want to say. Frame that gun a little bit more. And then settle a little. And we're going to pull to the left because we're pulling the mag. Our body is kind of following suit. A little bit of an overshoot. And then as the mag comes back on screen, I think I want to look a little left again, just because our attention is kind of rotating towards that mag. And then mag in, we're going to come right a little bit. And then have a big impact with overshoot. But here, I think I want to have a bit of a kind of anticipation, opposite rotation. Oops. Maybe not as extreme. Just kind of softening out, slowing down here. Boom, impact. And recovery. I like that where that is. And then we'll maybe rotate a little bit to the left again. Oop. For the settle. Go right. Cool. That mag out might be too extreme. Maybe move the whole thing down. And increase the impact on the mag in. Okay, that is our yaw. Let's do the pitch now. So for this, we're going to overall maybe want to raise up, I would say. But maybe a little bit of anticipation dip. Kind of mimicking what the gun is doing. Sometimes you might want to do what the gun is doing, sometimes you might want to do the opposite. I think in this case, raising up works pretty well. We're going to be pulling down here. So maybe this frame is going to be a little upwards and then pulling down. You could go the other way. You could do like an upwards, with a settle, which works pretty well. Oh, this is really extreme. I wouldn't go that much. That works well. Upwards, kind of like you're following the gun, or you could go downwards like you're following the mag. With a little bit of a recovery there. Not sure which one I like better, actually. Down obviously is good because you see more of the gun. This is really extreme. Need to soften that. But upwards, it has some merit because, it's a nice bit of texture to not see as much of the gun as you might expect. Plus, we're already kind of down here, which is inverted. Down is up in this case. So maybe we want to focus on keeping the keys overall closer to 0. So we will go down for this reaction. just so that overall it's not deviating too much from our idle pose. For this, reposition down and then up. Kind of makes sense. Maybe not as extreme. We don't want it to be kind of noticeable. We just want it to support the action. But when it impacts the shoulder here or the pit of the elbow or whatever, maybe a bit of an impact. Not too much of a reaction, obviously. Just kind of moving keys around and seeing what I like the feel of. What I don't want is it kind of feels like it comes up here, whereas maybe the up is only as the mag is raised, and then it comes down again pretty fast. And obviously I'm not caring too much about what the tangents are doing. Sometimes just letting them do their own thing is nice for like an organic, textured kind of, like, you're not caring about it too much, because at the end of the day it is supposed to be slightly random and slightly chaotic. So I'm never too fussed, I would say. Impact coming up and then down again. I like that. And then obviously the combination of the two axes and their different rotations sometimes creates an arcing motion. So this is kind of going to the right and up in a kind of circle. Then we'll go down. And then settle. Do we want it to be extreme? It's strong, but it kind of supports how far the gun dips down. Maybe we'll reduce it a little bit and then make this less intense. But we don't want it to be too delayed, you know, behind the action of the gun. Just enough that it feels like, you know, the head is its own thing. It's not fully connected, but it's not, you know, lagging behind. Okay, that's good enough, I would say. Now, the favorite, the roll. A lot of people like this. It is very easy to overdo, because while the center of screen might not move too much when you're rolling, the edges actually move quite a lot. And if you're doing lots of zigzaggy things, it can easily become a bit overwhelming for people. It's not going to be as like motion sickness inducing as the other two axes, but it is just something very intense that can be easily overdone. So I'm going to start with rotate to the left and then settle to the right to our mag out pose. Give it just a little bit of texture. And then this is where we can have some really nice impacts. So between this and this frame, I'm going to, let's try pull this way and then settle the other way. That's all right. Maybe a bit strong. And then come back this way again with the mag in. And then as we have the tip of the mag kind of impact, we can have some more texture here to simulate like that physical little jitter. And then mag in. And you could be tempted to do like a big zigzag here like this. Some people do that. And that's, you know, totally fine if you're making it feel like really impactful. Like you could do that. And honestly, that doesn't look too bad. You just want to be tasteful with it. Don't have it keep zigzagging too much. Kind of taper it off. This is feeling a bit delayed, so I would probably bring this back by 1 frame. But see, like this is just way too intense. So I would be less intense with it. Something tasteful like that. Just a little bit. You get some impact. You can get some extra impact in how your animation feels with the sounds as well. If you have some nice, strong, clinky, ratchety sounds for the reload, that'll basically just double how it feels from sound alone. But as long as you kind of get the vibe, like if you're playing through your animation and you can almost hear how it sounds with, you know, no sound, you're achieving what you're wanting to get out of it, I would say. Overall, I want to stay kind of rotated to the right here. So then I can settle back to the left. That's a bit too wavy. It is making me feel a bit motion sick. That's better. And do we have a finished animation? This is a pretty serviceable reload. Nothing too crazy. We haven't done a mag throw. We haven't done too much space switching. It's pretty basic, but it reads as a reload. It feels, you know, fairly tactical. It feels tactile, and you know, it works perfectly fine, I would say. I would be happy using this as a pretty basic reload animation. So there we go. Hopefully this hasn't been too long. Let's take a look at the recording time. 1.5 hours on this session. So if I edit together the blockout and this, that's going to be roughly 2.5 hours. So plenty of stuff to watch through if you're the type of person that enjoys the entire process and seeing things from start to finish with nothing cut out. Yeah, this has been animating an entire reload unedited. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learned something useful that you can apply in your own animations, in your workflows. You can apply most of the stuff to your Blender animations as well. Everything is totally transferable. It's just the exact workflow might be a little bit different. But yeah, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and happy animating.